Well, hello once again. This was kind of a late addition to a video I posted several months ago called Success Part 1, and this is Success Part 2. But I'm not going to do um, the way I normally do. I'm just going to give you kind of hopefully a short addition to what success was. I had mentioned in that I wanted to explain a story when I was talking about tithing and why I feel it's important. And I know a lot of people disagree with tithing, so I mean, you can leave comments, tell me what you think, whatever. But I believe in tithing. I don't necessarily always get it done right myself, but I do believe in tithing. But here's the story I want to share because I thought it was kind of a cool story, so to speak. But there was a young man that truly loved God, and he started a lawnmower uh, service, going around cutting lawns or whatever. And this was back in the day, so he wasn't making quite as much as what they charge now, but he'd charge a couple dollars, to cut someone's lawn. He wasn't doing anything fancy at the time. He was just cutting lawns, and he'd go out at the end of a week. He'd make $10, $14, but for easy numbers, I'm going to use 10. And so when he made $10, he always took $1 and he put it aside, and that was for tithing on Sunday morning when he'd go to church. He was always really close with his pastor and everything else like that, and he had a really good understanding of what tithing was. And it didn't take him long, several months of cutting lawns, he was suddenly making like $100 a week cutting lawns. And so, he had $10 put aside that he'd put in the church plate and do that. And his business kept growing to where all of a sudden he was making $1,000, a week cutting lawns because he had actually hired some people to work for him, and they weren't just cutting lawns anymore. They were doing little landscaping things. And so when he made $1,000, and this was his profit end, he made $1,000 or whatever, he threw $100 in the church plate. Well, his business kept growing literally like gangbusters, and suddenly he was making $10,000. And I don't remember if that was in a month or how it was, but and this is, I think, more of a story than it is reality, but I think it was based on some reality. But he got $10,000, and we'll say in a month, and so he dropped $1,000 into the offering plate or whatever, and he didn't really think much of it, and his business kept growing to where he goes from $10,000 a month to $50,000 a month, so now he's putting $5,000 in the offering plate. But anyhow, it kept growing. His business really grew gangbusters. At one point, he got up to $100,000 in a month, so he's dropping $10,000 in the offering plate. But then the business grew and grew and grew and grew, and he was making like $1 million. And when he got up to that, he went in and he had a talk with his pastor, and he said, "Pastor," he said, I really need some help here. I really need to understand, what I'm doing. I need to understand this tithing." He said, I I need to drop $100,000 in the offering plate, and I have a really hard time with that. That's a lot of money to drop into the offering plate. And his pastor was saying, "Well, I mean, why are you saying you have to drop $100,000 in the offering plate?" And he said, "Well, my business has really grown from the early days. I mean, we made $1 million." And he said, so the pastor asked him, he said, "Well, now why do you think your business has grown?" And he said, "Well, I mean, we do a good job. We're a good, strong, motivated company, and we give the customer what they want." And the pastor said, "Okay, well, that sounds good." And he said, "Now, throughout all this, you've been tithing your 10%. And, God has promised, and it's not always necessarily money, but God has promised that, He will always outgive you. Whatever you give, He'll give 7, 10 times more than what you're giving. And so, do you ever think about the fact that maybe God is the reason that your business is, growing so successfully, because you're being faithful to God? And the young man says, well, yeah, I mean, I accept that and I believe that. He said, but it still doesn't make it any easier for me just to go throw $100,000 in the offering plate, and I just need some help. And the pastor said, well, I tell you what, I can help you. Why don't we have a prayer? And the young man said, well, okay, I'm good for prayer. So the pastor, said, dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for all the blessings that you give. We want to thank you for how you've helped this young man grow in his business and be successful. We want to thank you for allowing him to participate in the church functions. But Lord, right now, this young man is struggling because of tithing. He's feeling like to throw $100,000 in the tithing plate might be too much. And I guess I can understand that, Lord. So what I'd like to do here is to ask you to help reduce this young man's business back to a point where he's comfortable with his tithing level. And before the pastor could finish, the young man was like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want my business to go down. I just want to know about the $100,000, and the pastor said, well, see, that's the point. You've been blessing God because he's been blessing you, and he blesses you more than you bless him. And you want to stay faithful to him, but you have a hard time with that amount of money. So in order for you to be able to stay faithful with him, I thought we could just pray that, your income would get back down to a level to where you were comfortable with your tithing amount. And the young man said, I got to think on this. And he left. And, as the story goes, I don't know what happened after that. I don't know if the young man's business went down so he could afford to tithe, or if he continued to tithe and his business continued to grow. But I always found that to be a funny story, because that's how we operate in life. We get successful, and sometimes we forget about God along that path of success. Because once we're early on, when we don't have the success that we think we should have, we're constantly expecting things from God. We're praying, and, we're being faithful and everything else. But then all of a sudden it comes to a point where you might feel like, well, I really don't need God right now. I mean, look where I'm at. I got everything I could need. And the point is, you got what you need, and you got blessed more because of God. If you decide to hold back because you think now it's suddenly too much, then you have to remember that God's going to hold back as well, because he's going to always bless you in relation to how you bless him and how you bless others. Does God need your money? No, God does not need your money. God doesn't need anything from you, but he needs obedience. He needs love, and he needs sacrifice. And I think for this young man, $100,000 seemed like too much of a sacrifice. I worked hard for all this, and so that's a lot of money to sacrifice. But that's what our relationship with God is. We sacrifice for him because he sacrificed first for us. And I think that if you stop and think about that, and you begin your road to success, and you include God in your road to success, you will be successful. You will get where you want to get. Now, some people who know me might say, well, Art, what about you? Look where you're at. Yeah, you know what? I'm not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I probably fall in the category of poor. But I'm very rich in blessings because of my family, my friends, and everything else. And so I've been blessed, but I don't feel like I've always blessed God back. I don't feel like I've always done exactly what I need to do. So think about that. Please share this video and comment. Tell me what you think. I don't mind if you don't agree with me. I keep telling folks this. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to like me. But comment, share this, get this out there so we can get conversations going, important conversations. So until the next time, remember, I'll always love you. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he look on you with favor and give you peace.